What is up, Scoop Nation? Excited to be here, Scoop fam. Glad that you are joining us tonight. Make sure you hit that like button. We decided to opt out of the intro video today. Throws me off a little bit, but we're getting rolling, man. Excited to see everybody in here. Steely, Mark, see you guys all in the chat. Hop in there if you haven't already, man. We got an excited show planned for you guys tonight. Is there a certain player about to commit to the Buckeyes, another underrated star? We're going to get into that, get into the overall class a little bit tonight. But before we do that, Nevada, how you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing great. I'm just recovering from I took a shellacking last night betting UFC on the UFC national card, and so I've just been licking my wounds all day and trying to search my cushions for dollars or quarters or anything else that I could find out of there. But I got just shallywhacked last night, and so. So excited to be here, talk about something more positive than the beating that I took last night. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Dude, I can relate a little bit different subject though, but I just got off the golf course today and I was 9 over after 9 holes, and I quit. I quit, man. I had to pack her up and come on home because it was bad, dude. But I've been on vacation for a week, but I still been paying attention to what's going on. So let's dive into one of the most recent things that's coming about for Ohio State recruiting. It involves a certain wide receiver. We're gonna stick with Jay Guilford for tonight. We decided that before the show because we talking about the pronouncing his first name. We think we know it, but we'll stick with Jay Guilford tonight. He was set to commit previously, I believe, on June 27th, and that was leading towards Ohio State, then Ole Miss, but he has now since come out with the new commit date for July 18th at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. His top schools are Ole Miss, Ohio State, that team up north, and Indiana. And this is one of those ones, Nevada. I know you love this, man. When Will Fong, dude, I think he switched his crystal balls like 3 or 4 times. Well, currently it's back on Ohio State, man. This is the number 442nd player nationally. If you're somebody that pays attention to those rankings, he's the number one player in the state of Indiana. But I'll tell you right now, he is extremely high on Heartline's board, and it looks like it's leaning towards Ohio State. So Nevada, start us off, man. What are you thinking about this player in particular and him committing to the Buckeyes? What's your thoughts?
I think it's going to happen. Obviously, in this era of craziness and NIL, I've retired the equal sign because the it's just so hard to be 100% certain. But I'm reasonably sure, almost guaranteed that Ohio State's going to get him. I can tell you, here's what I can tell you for a fact. He is really high on Ohio State's board. And you can believe that, you cannot believe it, or whatever it is. But let me just give you the facts. I mean, he's right up there in the conversation with the Caden Dixon Wyatts, with the Chris Henrys in this 2026 class in Ohio State's eyes. And the fact that they've already got 4 wide receivers committed to this class, 4 great wide receivers, in my opinion, and that they're going for a fifth just shows you how excited, because Brian Hartline doesn't need to reach. Ohio State doesn't need to reach. Ryan Davis doesn't just need to get another body out there at wide receiver. But this is a kid that's 6'2", 190. Really reminds me of Chris Olave, the way he plays out there. And just a tremendous, tremendous player. I don't know where he's ranked nationally. I do know, like you said, he's number one player in the state of Indiana, but he's a high on Ohio State's board, and this is a good get for this is a guy that they're getting over Ole Miss, who's done really well with wide receivers. Over Michigan. I mean, you know, I don't know why a wide receiver would want to go there anyway. But he went to visited Penn State. Obviously, Indiana's been hot, but yeah, a really good gift. I'm excited about this one. I'm excited about because he's been kind of a sleeper on Ohio State's board for a while. I know he was high up there. I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to pull it off. It looks like they did. Brian Hartline is a wizard in terms of getting these wide receivers, getting them to come in and take less money. This is another kid who's taking less money in NIL to come to Ohio State because he is valuing culture, valuing development over cash. And those are the kind of kids that Ohio State's looking for. That's kind of their, think of it like a screen that they're using to screen out the other ones. The kids that are just want the highest bid, man, they're not the right fit for Ohio State. Now Ohio State's just saying, something, this is probably not the place for you. This is not one of those kids. This is the kid that's coming for the right reasons, and I'm very, very certain as I can be in this crazy NIL era, that Ohio State's going to get him. And on July 18th, we're going to be adding another wide receiver to the room.
Yeah, if you're one of those people, if you've watched any show I've been on, period, I'm not a big fan of star rankings. You have 5 stars that bust, and you have 3 stars that play well above that. So there's evidence for this to go both ways. But Nevada, as you said, man, like on Brian Hartline's board, this player is way up there. You brought up a really good point. The fact that he is going after this player the way that he is, with Chris Henry Jr., who is the number 3 ranked wide receiver in the class, Caden Dixon-Wyatt, the number 5 ranked wide receiver in the class, and he's still going after a 5th wide receiver. That should tell you all you need to know. And Matt, I just got to ask you, you got all these different boards and all these different rankings out there, right, that you can look at, 247, On3, Rivals, yada, yada. Whose list would you pay more attention to? Brian Hartline's 247s or On3s? Which one are you going to go for?
Yeah, it's gonna be Brian Hartline's by a smidge over those other ones. But no, I mean, look, I've been in the recruiting business. I've seen the inside of how the recruiting rankings are done for the 3 decades right now. They they just don't have the resources to do it. They can't evaluate all the players nationally. The guys that are doing this, maybe they've seen half a dozen of them in person. I mean, like they're just not. Most of it's done on tape. Most of it's done on reputation. A lot of it's done on negotiation with the different sites in terms of who do they want to push and what they want to put out there. So there's more reasons going to this thing than rationale. And for Brian Hartline, they've got millions of dollars. They've got paid stringers that are out there evaluating, and his very life and livelihood is depending on getting the top guys in the country in his room. And this is a guy that they're going at after they've already landed 4, and the 4 they've got, I think, are terrific. I think any one of those 4 could be a star, and they're going after a 5th. Yeah, you don't do that unless this is a guy that you've coveted. I know that they've coveted him since, like I said, we had glimpses of the board very, very early in the process, and this was a name, because Jay Guilford, Jerquadian, JQ, whatever we want to call it. Like, that's not a name you forget. So when you see it, you're like, okay, yeah, that's the name I'm going to really pay attention to. And frankly, I mean, when I saw Ole Miss going at him as hard as it could, Ole Miss doesn't play. I mean, Lane Kiffin, you can say a lot of things about Lane Kiffin and everything else like that, but that guy knows offensive talent. They've done a really good job offensively. I mean, they're going hard on a guy. You can generally tell that he's a baller, and this kid's a baller, and he's going to be. I think he's going to go look great in Ohio State uniform. And again, big get for Brian Hartline and the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch this player's film, it doesn't look like he's going up against the best competition I've ever seen, right? But it looks like he's doing what he should against competition that is a little bit inferior to him, right? But man, you brought up Chris Olave, that comparison as far as playing on the field, his style, what looks like, also his ranking. Chris Olave, a 3-star as well. But man, when I watch this film, to be honest with you, dude, the smoothness is what I saw. And it reminded me a lot of Carnell Tate, man. So long story short, Brian Hartline has a type of wide receiver that he really loves to go after, and he will, go after different ones from time to time, but this really fits the mold for what he's going after. And that's all I need to know, man. If Brian Hartline wants this player the way that he's going after him, then, I mean, my trust is there, right, with that. But it is kind of wild, man, what Ohio State has been able to do with what wide receiver recruiting. Nevada, I wanted to ask you, man, like your overall thoughts about how big a deal is that to dominate the wide receiver recruiting the way that Ohio State has? Because I'm not sure I've ever sat back and really realized how much of an effect that is going to have on a game. Like you look at the way JJ Smith does it, and we talk like, hey, they're going to cover JJ Smith. That's going to leave Brandon Innes, Carnell Tate wide open. But what he's been able to do and to keep Chris Henry Jr., Caden Dixon-Wyatt, Brock Boyd, and Jaden Ricketts in the class, and we're gonna add a fifth one here. The domination that Ohio State has had in wide receiver, all you see on Twitter now is, oh, why can he play defensive end? Why can't our defensive line recruiting be this way? That's a whole other conversation. But Nevada, I want your thoughts on how this actually helps Ohio State. How much domination does this bring to them? What type of leverage is this going to give Ohio State for the future of the program to have, hands down, I'm not quite sure it's even close, the best wide receiver room in the country, man.
Well, I think I always believe in kind of the law of unintended consequences and kind of the secondary and tertiary effects of stuff like this. And you have to understand that the wide receiver position in itself is already overpowered. There's so many rules that are set up to favor the passing game. With the no contact rules and the no holding, and they've been they've given much more liberal sent to passing because they want passing in the game. So you've got a position already that's overpowered. And because you're getting, I mean, this Ohio State's kind of lucked into this, but this is kind of what's happened. When you're landing the best wide receivers in the country, then you automatically go to the next highest overpowered position in college football, which is quarterback. What do the quarterbacks want? They want the best wide receivers. So how do you get the best quarterbacks? Well, you say you got the best wide receiver room. And that's the path. It's not the other way around. It's not, hey, we'll get the quarterback and then the wide receivers will flock to it. It's you get the wide receivers and the quarterbacks will flock to play with those guys. And so, look, you can make an argument for every position. You can say how important defensive line is, how important offensive line is, how important linebackers is, or whatever it is. I'm telling you, from a value perspective, in terms of expected value, in terms of winning game, there's no higher expected value position than wide receiver in college football. It is the highest. They have the highest impact. They have the most impact on other things on the game because when they have to account for the wide receivers and when you're getting the elite quarterbacks, now it takes the strain off your running game. Now it takes the strain off your offensive line because teams can't sell it to stop you. There's so many things that come from having dominant wide receivers. So having Brian Hartline, you know, I mean, the fact is we've always recruited good to great wide receivers at Ohio State, but Hartline's taken it to a different level, and that's why he was so important to keep. And when the Chip Kelly left, and the people were talking about the wide receiver position, like are they going to bring in another coach? What's going to go on, with Hartline? Is he going to take the offensive coordinator job? And you remember who broke that Brian Hartline was getting the offensive coordinator job? We had that like 72 hours before anybody else had that was going to be going on. That's how important Brian Hartline is to this equation. So Ohio State has kind of, I think it's been happenstance just because they just happen to have this elite recruiter at the wide receiver position, but I think it's driven every other decision that's going on. And frankly, I think it's a big part of why Ohio State is now QBU now. I mean, for years and years and years, we couldn't get a quarterback drafted in the first round or have, starting quarterbacks. And I think Mike Tomczak was like our big, stalwart quarterback, or Art Schlichter or Bob Atha or something like that. But now we crank them out every year, just like Cordwood. We just crank out the next quarterback going into the league. So all starts with wide receivers. This is getting it, and getting a fifth guy in this class. Like you never know who the stars are going to be, but I wouldn't bet against any one of these five because I think these guys are all terrific. They're all fluid. They're all, these are natural hand catchers, very, very smooth guys, very, very smart, experienced route runners. So I'm excited about this. But Jay Guilford, guy Ohio State wanted from the very beginning, and looks like they're getting them, and I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, I know, man. Brock Boyd, another one committed in the class, had like 1,900 yards, 19 touchdowns in Texas 6A competition, tied the record, excuse me, with like 178 catch yards in a championship game for Texas, mind you. Jaden Ricketts runs a 4.3740. And Chris Henry Jr., 6'5", 205 right now, and people say he is still growing. He might even be taller and bigger than that now. Caden Dixon-Wyatt, I went to the OT7 event, and he was easily a top 3 receiver at that entire event. If you don't know what that is, it's the biggest 7-on-7 event that there is, and there's wide receivers in every class from all over the country there. And you could see the Ohio State receiver out there, as far as some other ones as well. Jameer Brown was there as well. And what Brian Hartline is doing, man, that play to move him to offensive coordinator, it's like, man, how long can you keep a hold of Brian Hartline? Because you brought up a very good point about Ole Miss is after this player, and a lot of other teams are after a lot of these wide receivers as well. And they are picking less money to come here. Over on the Buckeye Boys channel, we do this in the chat. Somebody put culture over currency, hashtag culture over currency. And that's what you're seeing happen right now with the Buckeyes. And it's not just in the wide receiver position, because everybody always says that, to bring up a sore subject here, defensive line recruiting. Everybody's always like, well, Hartline, right, has the same amount of money, but he's able to still win these recruitments. Well, I mean, Larry Johnson's doing the same thing. Nevada, I wanted to move on kind of to the overall aspect of this class because, man, dude, when I get on social media, sometimes some of these message boards, and I know this all stems around D-line recruiting, but man, Buckeye Nation, we're so crazy. And I say we're because I'm in that category sometimes as well. But we just won a national title not long ago. And if I go based off the comments that I read and I hear from other people, we probably have the 30th ranked class right now, right? And it just kind of dumbfounds me. I'm going to go ahead and pull up our class that we have committed right now. Which about, I think we talked, is like fourth in average star ranking in the nation. So we're doing pretty well there. We're a top 6 class in the nation right now. So I don't know. I always hear, you talk on here about not getting so worked up with recruiting. And that's kind of right where I learned that from, is because I get too caught up in thinking that I need to look at a recruiting class, and that recruiting class right there better be able to go on the field, right, and win football games. But that's not the truth. Why do we care about recruiting? Because we want our football team to win football games. And I know you've heard this 100 times if you've heard me speak before. I'm very passionate about this. It's not just one recruiting class that fields the team. It's the transfer portal, several recruiting classes combined together, and that's what we have on the field. So if there's ever a position that does not perform on the field, that's when I will have an issue. Yeah, I can be a little bit not excited about some of these rankings and stuff, but I go look at the film and then I'll wait and see how they develop and how they play on the field. But Matt, I'll scroll down through this list right now of our recruiting class, which is ranked 6, right? And we're going to see right here. This is a bad one to pull up. This is on 3. Matter of fact, no, this is 247. So we'll keep this one up. Nevada, what's your thoughts on this class overall, right? A lot of people want to pay attention to defensive line recruiting and say that is poor. And because that's poor, this class is not well-rounded. What would you say to that? I'd be
Well,
curious
look,
about this.
yeah. First of all, the only relevant metric when evaluating classes, in my opinion, and this is somebody I've been doing the recruiting game for as long as anybody in the business now, but the only relevant metric is average star ranking. Because the number of recruits, I mean, the total number that you get for that is the average star ranking times the number of recruits. You can't control whether your class is going to be 18 or 22 or 26, or sometimes you have classes from some schools where like 35. And so, you know, you can't don't look at that number. That first number is not relevant. What is relevant is the average star ranking. Where are you in the average star ranking? And right now we're fourth in average star ranking, which for me, that's where Ohio State is pretty much every year. We're first, second, third, and we're right up there, right at the top. This is another terrific class. Um, you know, for all the off-season obsession about the defensive line, man, it is strangely reminiscent of all the conversations that I used to have about Greg Studrar and the the offensive line and how are we ever going to field an offensive line. Now we've gone to the defensive line, and it's really, to me, it's a weird conversation, just because one, we brought in 7 guys last year in the recruiting, in the recruiting cycle, 7 guys. So it's, as you mentioned, it's not just your recruits anymore. It's your transfer portal guys. And no one's played the transfer portal game better than Ohio State. Other teams have played it well, but nobody's played it better than Ohio State. So transfer portal, every bit as important. And this year we added Travis George and Bo Atkinson. I mean, two big time players in the transfer portal. Got to count them as part of your recruiting cycle. Secondly, we just had all four guys on the defensive line drafted in the NFL draft. I'm not sure that's ever happened at Ohio State in the history of the program. Maybe it has. Maybe somebody can pull it up. I don't think it has. I don't think to have all four starters drafted in the NFL draft in the same year, crazy. So that's another data point. And then I go to the third data point, and I'm like, okay, you've got a defensive line with Edric Houston, with Caden McDonald, with Bo Atkinson, and whoever they put at the fourth spot, where they put Kenny Jackson, where they put Caden Curry. I think that's one of the best in the country. I'd put it right up there with anybody's, and certainly Caden McDonald and Edric Houston are as high end as anybody out there, and they're all underclassmen. They're going to be here more than likely, unless they go more than likely the next 2 years. So what are we really talking about? We're worried about the starters for 2027, or who the backups are going to be. Like, here, I'll give you 500. Name, tell me the backups on the 2002 national championship team when we won the national championship. Who were the backups? Can't come up with any of them. How about 2014? Give me who were the backup defensive tackles? Can't name them. I mean, we're talking about the backups. That's what we're worried about. The backup defensive line. That's what all this angst is about. So no, that's my view. Maybe it's right. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe it's crazy. Maybe it's homerish. You can call it whatever you want. But that's how I view the world, for better or worse.
Yeah, man. I've been back and forth on this. I've dove into so many things. I've seen people make charts and all kind of stuff. And man, I just try to make sure that I'm reading this the correct way. And I ask myself, okay, so number one, why do I care about a recruiting class? Right? It's because I want my team to win national championships, right? So a lot of people are upset with, the 23 class, the Josh Mickens, the Moore, the players that we should be hearing more about right now, honestly, but we're not. But we went in the transfer portal and we picked some players up. Okay, so you go to the next class. We got Zion Grady and Epicentelli last year. Like, those guys aren't meant to contribute right now. You brought up the starting defensive line that we're going to have right now. You got Kenyatta Jackson, Edric Houston, K-Mac, and then Bo Atkinson or Caden Curry on the other side. We signed Logan George as well. And then you always have a player, man. You always have a player that doesn't really get talked about, but shows up and shows out, right, when they need to, when their name is called. That's the type of culture that happens here. So if this year rolls around and we start seeing that, hey, man, our defensive line is struggling, the depth that comes in behind them, which, man, based off the games I watched last year, they didn't see the field all that often. But when they did, K-Mac stepped up, came in, did his thing. Like, who's to say some of these players aren't going to – we haven't had the opportunity to really judge these recruits. They haven't had their time on the field. Yeah, the Jason Moores, the Josh Mickens that were signed, right? You can look at that and maybe say, but we made up for that. We went out and got the Bo Atkinson. So I just hold, right, my judgment until I see what they do on the field, because nothing
Devin,
really.
but Devin, let me just ask you this question. Okay, when you're looking at a defensive line class, I look at it and I go, in a class, what's a reasonable expectation? For me, the reasonable expectation in every class, you need to get one bona fide starter on your defensive line, like a guy that's like a bona fide starter. So if we want to play the class game, okay, 23, Cade McDonald, that he was part of the 23 class. He's a stud. Cade McDonald is a stud. He's going to play in the NFL for 10 years, make $200 million. He was the anchor on that goal line defense last year. So Cade, 23 class, I don't care who else we got Cade McDonald. 24 class, we got Edric Houston. I don't care who else we got Edric Houston. 25 class, man, we got 7 guys in the class, including Bo Atkinson, with 7.5 sacks as a true sophomore. So that's a 25 class. So what was the expectation? That we're going to get 2 surefire starters, every year on the. I mean, we got our one start. It's just because other guys didn't pan out. You got Cade McDonald, you got Edric Houston, you got 7 guys last year, and as you said, somebody else will step up and perform. It's happened every year, every time, forever and ever and ever. But I mean, what is the expectation that we're going to do better than that? That's where I'm confused because our starting line's all underclassmen this year.
Yeah.
Everyone. So it's like, I mean, come on.
I know. I think that's what it is. Everybody's expectations are set at a different point. And, what I'm finding most of the time when I have conversations, because again, let me clarify something. If you have the idea, the thought that LJ sucks at recruiting, he needs to retire, that's fine. I don't hate you. You know what I mean? If you've done your research, you've gathered your data, and you have decided, if you've done it all on your own, right? And you have decided, hey, LJ needs to go, that's fine, right? We're still rooting for the Buckeyes. We all want the Buckeyes to do good. Like that. That's okay to do that. But man, I know we don't know what those in the star rankings. People look at those so much and they get stuck on it. The Luke Waffles, right? Well, I just got news for you. The information I'm gathering is Corey Wilder is looked at like a Luke Waffle. Like he can come in and possibly contribute. Damari Simeon on the defensive tackle side. I mean, on the On3 website, he's a number 65 player in the nation. So you have so many examples of all these 5 stars, Texas A&M, of the classes full of all these 5 stars that have failed, right? And then you have examples of 5 stars changing, right? A team for the better. Ohio State is really good at figuring out. J.J. Smith, look what he did this year. Caleb Downs, look what he did this year. Will Howard, look what they're really good at evaluating, right, these players and making that decision. We just won a national title. We have been the winningest football program. But I get people don't want to hear that, right? They think the trend is going down. They say, well, last year on the Natty team, our 2 defensive ends were 5 stars. So we need to have 5 stars. And I just don't get caught up in that. I wait and see. I go try to watch the film, and I care about some of these evaluations that our coaches are having inside. And then plus, I mean, with the way college football recruiting is going, I don't know if you guys know what's going on right now or not, but there's like nil collectives suing the NCAA right now. We saw this coming because the NILGO is turning away those deals that are from nil, right? So Ohio State has been taking a lot of crap because they're not paying for these players. And now that process has started, and Congress has came out to pass a law to kind of back up this NILGO and the CSC and these new divisions that are out there to help protect the game of college football. So, man, Ohio State is focused on one thing, right? They focused on the culture. Ryan Day says, number one, I want these men to succeed in life, because if you have trouble off the field, you're going to have a hard time staying focused on the field, right? So I care about results. You look at our odds this year to run it back. I don't think we're that far off. I mean, we were favored to run it back again by Vegas. I think we've come down now. I don't know who's leading, but I'm guessing we're at the top 5, top 3, top 2, maybe. So I just reserve my judgment and wait and see what we're putting on the field. And you're not seeing all these players run around going crazy. This is a little bit of a crazy time right now. We know there are certain teams following rules and other teams not following rules. If you want Ohio State to go pay for those players, they will lose that culture that they've spent time building, right? Because it's going to affect this year's class. And to get Luke Waffle, we would have had to pay him more or just as much as we're paying some of the starters. Ask yourself how that would have went. Or next year, we don't know which way this is going to go with the decision in Congress, decision in the courts, and all these suits and stuff. So if it goes Ohio State's way, but they decided, hey, this one time, let's front load all these deals. Let's pay Luke Waffle $1.2 million. And next year, another 5-star defensive end wants in, but the rules are now set in place. That bill has been passed by Congress that they can't pay him. It has to get cleared by the clearinghouse. And that 5-star is going to come in and only getting $250,000, looking at last year. Hey, why'd this dude get this? So it'll just screw things up. So there's a lot of confusion right now. Ohio State chose the path that they wanted to go. They made their priority list. Their priority list was culture first. That was it, because they know that is the foundation of this team. How many of us fans were so excited about the culture last year and have said, without the culture that we have, we don't win a national title? If you're on that, if you're in that belief system, then your number one want should to be to keep this culture the same. And I'm here to tell you, I talk to a lot of parents. I talk to a lot of recruits. The Lord has blessed me to be in that position. It's really, really cool. And they see that. They know it. There are some recruits that know Ohio State has the best culture, probably the best place for them to succeed. But some of these families are in different positions where they just need to go take the bag. And that's what needs to happen. So you can't have it both ways. And if I trust anybody at this point in time, I trust Ryan Day, right, and the Ohio State staff to, if they see a weak spot in defensive line recruiting, if on their board, Brickle and Simeon and JJ Perez are their last shots, they're not high on their board at all. You guys don't think Ryan Day is going to see that and make whatever changes necessary, right, to do that, if that is the case? So I trust this Ohio State staff to do what they're doing. I trust Ryan Day. We just won a national title. We've been what, 10-2. We haven't lost, more than 3 games in how long? Like, how many other college programs want to be Ohio State right now? They have earned my trust. They haven't done anything to lose it. So there are certain things as a fan that I can sit back and, boy, I can be mad about it if I want, and I can judge how they handle these recruitments all I want. But number one, don't have all the information, right? We have very little of the information of, okay, how's this recruit's family? How is this going to affect things in the locker room? We don't know all those things. So I can't throw out such a strong statement saying, I think Larry Johnson needs to leave now because he's not good enough job. Number one, I don't have enough information to do that. And number two, we haven't even played the season yet to understand whether we have. But it's all over the place. Long story short, man, I am stoked to be a Buckeye fan, and you can have that other opinion if you would like. I was one of those other ones last year. If you watched my show last year, I went in on Fry. And he might not be the best example because some of it might have been warranted, the way he handled his recruiting. But in the end, what did his unit do on the field? And what did all these recruits we were complaining about, what are they doing? What's the information we're gathering out of the Woody right now? That they're making serious moves in there. They are pushing these starters to take their place and to fill these roles and do their thing. So that's what I care about, man. Is the coach's unit going to perform on the field or not? And the season hasn't started. So anything to add to that, Nevada?
Well, yeah, let's talk about it. There's so much good stuff in there, Devin. Wow. Let's talk about the Fry thing just for a second. Last year at the beginning of the year, the complaint was that we didn't have depth on the offensive line. That was a popular take. We don't have depth on the offensive line. I said many, many times how, because of injury and happenstance, we ended up going to player number 9 on the depth chart and winning a national championship, a lot on the strength of our offensive line. So, that is out. But on top of that, now you have guys like Zen Mikulski, who was one part of the 9, but George Fitzpatrick, who was not part of the 9, they go and transfer, and now they're the bells of the ball at the schools that they're at right now. So that's just to speak to how many dudes do we have in the line. So we had a fan base that was saying, we've got no depth in the offensive line. We got nothing. We can't play. I'm not sure we're going to field 5 guys. But we go 9 deep, run the greatest run in Ohio State history, win the national championship, and we're still throwing extras on top of that 9 to other schools that are getting paid $750,000, and now they're going to be the starting stalwart for those offensive lines. So what my point is, how the perception and the reality can be very, very different. And I think on the defensive line, look, you could, that was certainly the ultimate team effort last year. We won the national championship, but the defensive line was certainly a big part of that. Who coaches the defensive line? If the defensive line was not productive, if the defensive line had not developed or whatever, then it would have been okay to go in on Larry Johnson. But it just seems a weird time to go in on Larry Johnson, coming off a national championship and coming in off of the time when you had all 4 guys drafted. It just seems weird to me that is the offseason obsession. Again, with we've had people call the recruiting class, the overall recruiting class, disappointing, surprising, shocking, all these other words. And man, I'm still smiling from seeing you at the national championship game. And that's no matter what happens this year, it's not going to wipe the smile off my face. This year's going to be a tough year. Tough year because our schedule's
Yep.
tough. We've got a tough road trip. We've got a new quarterback. We've got two new coordinators. I mean, we lost 14 guys to the NFL draft. I mean, we lost a lot. Are we insanely talented? Yes. Can we get there again? Absolutely. Do I trust in Ryan Day? Unequivocally, he has earned all of our trust. Trust is not something that's given or granted or bestowed. It's earned, and he's earned it. I mean, he earned it by pulling that team together after that inexplicable Michigan loss, running the table, winning 4 games, the toughest 4 game gauntlet in the history of college football, winning all 4 games by double digits, and delivering us a natty. If that doesn't make you a believer in the culture, in the process, in the state of the Ohio State football program, then I don't know what to tell you. If you're going to fret about, oh, we're only the 4th ranked average star rating class in the country. Forever are we going to win? We only have a defensive line who, in my opinion, is one of the best defensive lines in the country, and they're all underclassmen. Like so, you know, I'm just not. I'm not seeing a lot of the same issues. But again, it's like star rankings. Hey, who was the last wide receiver that we got out of Indiana? I think it was that 3-star Terry McLaurin was that kid that I think the last wide receiver that we got out of Indiana, and he turned out pretty good. I can remember the day he committed vividly. And here was this was Buckeye Nation when Terry McLaurin committed. It was like, oh, okay. Yeah, okay, next. Let's go on. I mean, nobody cared. There was no one excited about Terry McLaurin. And now, what does Terry McLaurin make in the NFL now? 40 million a year or something. I mean, he's just it's just incredible how good the kid turned out to be. We've got a great class coming in. We've got another great wide receiver coming in, but we're going to obsess over the guys that we miss. I never worry about the guys we miss, because with very few exceptions, I don't really pay much attention to them after they're gone. It's the guys that we get that I care about, and we've got a great class, and we are in great. These are indeed the platinum times to be an Ohio State fan. That's for sure.
Yeah, it really is, man. This is the same. It's just a pattern every year. There's a whipping boy, right? Like recruiting's not even over. You got all these things happening in the recruiting sphere, right? USC and Scum, they're out there paying the right recruits. They're promising recruits money that is being denied by CSC and Nilgo. Those deals are all being denied right now. So they had to go out. They have to sue. While they are suing to make that judgment go against the settlement that was already approved, by the way, Congress is presenting a bipartisan bill to back up Nilgo and CSC and say, hey, all these guidelines they have in place, they're protect the integrity of this game. They're to protect the athlete. It's got things like putting guidelines in place for agents. I mean, how long have we been complaining about agents and what they are doing? It puts a cap on what agents can make, which is 5%, right? There's been I think 1,500 deals approved so far through the CSC and the NILGO, that situation. Every single one turned in by a nil or collective right now is being denied. So it's also a crazy time, right? And for Ohio State to be one of the very few teams going out and paying absolutely crazy, insane money for these recruits, and to still have the number 4 average star ranking class in the nation. I mean, let's look at it from that point of view. We have that, and we're paying sometimes 4 times less because we are following the rules that were put in place to protect this game, right? And that's just what Ohio State's doing, man. So it's a pattern every single year. Nevada, did you talk about losing? Was it Sam Petito that we just lost to LSU, or was that? It wasn't. No, Mark Pantoni's still there. We just lost Sam, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you?
Key right hand guy. For Pantone that he lost. I mean, that's the price of success. The price of success is going to be you're going to get your guys poached, whether it be coaches, quality assurance assistants, accountable coaches, people on your recruiting staff. That people want to. They want to enjoy what you've done, and Ohio State's been doing it at such a high level for a long time. Not unexpected. This was a guy that was going to be a GM somewhere someday, so that was not surprising. But I wished him well and move on down the road.
Yeah, sorry, went off in a little rabbit trail there. I was asking if you already talked about that because you saw a couple Ohio State fans freaking out. But again, Ryan Day with the hires that he's making, Tyler Bowen coming in, killing recruiting, Coach Locke coming in and being a lot of people's favorite coach on the staff at this point in time. So it's just pretty wild what they're doing. And the other aspect of this, Nevada, that I know you've talked about, and this is the final thing I want to talk about in this class, is everybody wants to judge the defensive line class that we have, right? We are so used to having a certain defensive scheme, a defensive 4-down lineman setting that we need. So you got to ask yourself, are you connecting your thoughts to that as well, what our old scheme was? Because I want to tell you, Matt Patricia is our new defensive coordinator. And what we're hearing, I know Nevada spoke on it several times. And over there on the Scoop message board, several nuggets have been dropped about what he plans on doing. So if there is a deficiency, if those fans out there are right to be worried about our defensive line depth, I have faith that the plans that Matt Patricia has, right? He was, with New England for so long, and they kept getting lower and lower draft picks, so they couldn't go out and just pick, right, who they wanted to fit their scheme. So he had to change his draft selections when he was in NFL and start just picking the best athletes and changing the scheme according to them. That's how that went. I watched the show where he described that. So, with his accolades and as smart as he is and the athletes that we have on this team, you add that into this equation of LJ knowing what he's doing, the entire coaching staff, and then you add in Matt Patricia and what he's able to do with scheme and certain players with their skill sets, the Sonny Styles, the Arvell Reese, the CJ Hicks, even that gives me more faith and more confidence that, hey, man, right? If we're worried about our defensive line depth, if that's a real worry, you don't think that Ohio State staff knows this? You don't think they're getting things in place to help with that, to change the scheme up, like we've talked about several times? So, last thing, Nevada, that's all I wanted to talk about. I want you to kind of give your ideas on that as well. Does that build your confidence to where if we do lack depth on the defensive line, you think Matt Patricia can come in and scheme accordingly to fill in those gaps if there are any?
Well, yeah, just to dumb it down. I mean, basically what Ohio State's doing is in order to bring pressure, they're bringing a stand-up linebacker. They're playing that defensive end. I mean, they're generating the pressure, as you mentioned. I mean, the guys you mentioned are exactly right. Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, CJ Hicks. I mean, they're bringing those blitzing linebackers off the edge to kind of simulate the pressure of a defensive end. And so that's what Matt Patricia did, very effectively in the NFL. That's what Ohio State did very effectively in the spring. And I've said this on another podcast, but this did not got wide circulation, and you're not going to hear this on any other podcast. But the defense was running ahead of the offense for most of the spring. And most of the reason they were running ahead was their ability to get to the quarterback. The offensive line, so it was either one of two things. Either our offensive line was having trouble protecting, or our defensive line was particularly adept at generating pressure. But it was one of those, or maybe a little bit of both. But that was what was happening. And you didn't see that in spring games, so they dialed that back. And you saw, little glimpses here and there, but they were not running the same stuff they were running in spring. The defense was killing the offensive line during the spring. So yeah, no, I think Patricia's used to dealing. In the NFL, you don't have you know 35 5 stars, and the other team has three, 21 3 stars playing up against you. The talent's pretty equal, and you've got to defeat that with scheme, and that's how you do it. But you're going to see a lot of that, and that's why a lot of people are predicting Arvell Reese. I believe Helping Technician predicted him to lead the team in sacks this year. I think it's probably I think it's a pretty smart choice because you're going to see him a lot. You're going to see Peyton Pierce and Sonny, lined up at linebacker, and you're going to see Arvo Reese standing at the end of the line. You're going to go, oh wow, that's interesting. Hadn't seen that before, but that's what's going to happen. And Ohio State's going to bring pressure in a lot of different ways. They're going to support the run in a lot of different ways, and so it's going to be different. And I think the way that they're recruiting guys, the kind of the versatility they're looking for guys, is going to be different as well. But they've got athletes. What Matt Patricia just needs is athletes. And this Ohio State team does not lack in athleticism on either side of the ball. This recruiting class, the last 4 recruiting classes don't lack for athletes. So Ohio State's going to be just fine. That gives me great comfort that we're going to continue this success into 2025, 26, 27, and beyond. I have no doubt in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, the other aspect of this defensive line stuff that we're talking about right now that I think a lot of fans aren't talking about or thinking about is the developmental aspect of this program. So we're freaking out now, right? We're freaking out 3 months ago, 4 months ago when we're in the spring, when there's a lot of training left to go, a lot of weight room stuff, a lot of coaching, a lot of film. So you can't count out players like a Jason Moore, Taiwan Malo, Eric Mensah. We can't count these guys out. And you ask yourself realistically, okay, if we have a group of 5 defensive linemen that we know we're excited about, I think we can confidently say that. Curry, Atkinson, Jackson, Houston, and K-Mac. Those are 5 pretty solid guys we know we can put on the field. So you ask yourself, okay, how many backups do we really need to stand up and stand out? Last year, I mean, we had K-Mac. He was one of the few defensive backups that came in that really got praise. I don't remember a lot of other defensive line backups coming in getting a lot of praise. Now, they clearly got the job done. We won a national title, but again, I think it's just a little bit of overreaction there, and you can't count out with the competitive nature that is in the Ohio State locker room right now. I mean, I just heard a JJ Smith interview, and he said that this year's training, this year's weightlifting was harder than last year's, right? The coaching staff did that on purpose because there's so many new guys. So they are pushing these guys. So these guys that are waiting back in the defensive line room that for some reason fans have just lost all faith. Will Smith Jr., like you're hearing a little bit about him, but there's a lot to go. Like there's an opportunity still for those players to make a name for themselves, get on the field. This is their life. That's why they came to this school. They want to play in the NFL. You don't think Jason Moore wants to play in the NFL? You don't think that the competitive nature of this locker room and this coaching staff, the developmental Mick and his weightlifting strategies can boost him up to be a player this year? Now, you can judge based off of old film you saw or old stuff, but don't do that to Julian Sand because he came off the bench a couple times last year cold, and man, you don't want to go look at those throws and get excited about this year. So there's a lot left to go, man. There's a lot of positive things about this program, and the nation, Ohio State's very hated, right? And they always poke little things into the fan base to get you riled up and get us going. When the fact of the matter is we're national champs. We have the 4th ranked class, right, as far as average star rankings, and we're not overpaying for these players. We're keeping that culture intact. Every player that signs with Ohio State right now, wants to play for Ohio State. They're taking less money. So how many transfers did we have in the spring transfer time? 0. Why? Because these players want to come here. They want to be here, right? And I think more than anything, you want that continuity in a football team. You want your foundation, that football team, to be guys you recruited. And that's what Ohio State's doing. They're not leaving. Go look at all these other teams. They're leaving everywhere because if you can get a recruit with a bag, what happens when a bigger bag comes next year? What happens? What happens when you pay Felix Ojo $1.5 million as a freshman? He goes on the field and has a couple good games, and in the portal is getting offered $2 million. What are you going to do then? Now, I know there's these 3-year deals. Teams are trying to make that happen as well, but there's so many things to like about Ohio State. Don't get caught up in the negative aspects of it. Let this class finish out. Let this team play on the field. And then as things play out, you have the right to reserve judgment. You have the right to your opinion no matter what, right? I'm giving you my opinion. Nevada's giving you his opinion. And listen, I've been watching a lot of YouTube shows, and I know I'm sitting here with him right now, but man, I learned a lot from listening to Buckeye Scoop last year with Fry and the offensive line recruiting. I was one of those ones when we lost out on David Sanders. I thought the class was trash. I was like, oh no, we're not going to have I almost thought we weren't going to have an offensive line to put on the field next year. Like, that's what you would have thought based off my reaction. Like, that's how I got. But man, after watching what this team did last year and the reasoning why they did it last year is because of the culture, that's my new number one. When I look at Ohio State recruiting and I see them miss on recruits and I dig into it and I find out why, I'm like, well, good. That's what I wanted them to do. I would not want you to go out and pay that amount for that player and screw up the whole team. So a lot of good things, man. A lot of different opinions. Nevada, any closing thoughts, closing statements, anything else you want to talk about tonight, man?
Well, no, again, one, I just really enjoy the show, Devin. You did a great job hosting, man, and I really appreciate it. And I'll just say one more thing on Felix Ojo would be worse than Felix Ojo coming on the field, getting paid $1.5 million and doing good and looking for a bigger bag. What if Felix Ojo goes out to the field and stinks, and all the other guys are going, this guy got $1.5 million and he's not even starting. Where's my bag? And then you have five guys lined up that want $1.5 million. That's where the problems, that's not the beginning and end, but that's what pulls teams apart and really causes a
Yeah.
disaster.
Yeah. Well, Pooh Beard gave us a super chat. Pooh Beard goes down as probably one of the best super chatters on this channel since I've been watching anyway. He says, for the D-line haters, Joey Bosa was only a 4-star recruit and the number 13 player in Florida, despite the Aquinas High School calling him the best player he'd ever coached. I mean, dude, there are so many examples of this that I can't logically get all worked up over what a player is ranked, right? I have a little bit in the know now to kind of know where Ohio State places these players on the board, and that's what I pay attention to. Damari Simeon was right beside Deuce Gerald. So when we probably don't get Deuce Gerald, you're going to see a large group of the fan base freak out. Ohio State got their play already that they wanted on their board. That's what I care about. And he came for less money, wanted to be a Buckeye, all that thing, keep that culture. So anything to add to Pooh Beard's super chat, Nevada?
No, it's a great point, and I can tell you on Wilder, Kari Wilder. Like I'm close to the Sarah guys. Like I know those guys. They think he's the best defensive line player they've ever had. And Jay Sarah has some players, man. Like they've put out some guys. And so, you know, I don't know if he's a 4-star or high 4-star, low 4, whatever it's going to be, but he's a 5-star in their book. And the people in Southern California love that kid. So, yeah, don't get caught up on. I think star rankings, they're a good general barometer. That's why, like I said, that's why I look at the average. I look where we're at. If I see if we were number 14, we'd probably be having a different discussion. But when you're number 4 on average, and the difference is like a hundredth of a point, yeah, I'm just not that concerned about it. I think this is another. It's sufficient. All you want your classes to be is sufficient. You just don't want to eat the cadoodle and have a terrible class and have the thing drop and run off. This is another sufficient class, right in line with the other ones we've brought up out here the last few years. Definitely keeps the idea of a dynastic run chugging right along.
You know what I'm going to do, and I think it's going to answer a lot of questions for these star rankings. And I'm going to go back to the last like 4 or 5 real national champs, and I'm going to get together the average star rankings of the starters on that team. I'm curious to see what the average star ranking would be for the past 5 national champs, minus the year before. That one, doesn't count. It's when you cheat, you skew data points. So thanks for that one as well. But
So Will Howard, what would Will Howard go in? It's like a 2-star or something like that. I mean,
yeah, what do you do with the 0 star?
Yeah, nobody wanted Will Howard, man. So like that's going to be a very interesting exercise for sure.
Well, you remember K-Max recruiting as well. I mean, do people, from what I remember, people were not excited about that one. He was just a little too short to really meet people's needs.
He didn't go to Georgia, so how good could he be, right? And he's a monster, man. That guy is a monster.
And I don't know if you've got any updates on him lately, but the videos he's been putting online, I think he's down to like 295 right now. I'm not sure what he's going to play at, but boy, he looks even. I mean, he looks nastier, man. So, I think that a nugget that got brushed over, J.J. Smith, that recent interview, go look at it. He said that this year's training in the weight room, this whole offseason has been harder than last year's, and we won a national title last year. So a lot to be excited about, Buckeye Nation. We appreciate you guys so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for the super chat, Pooh Beard. And join us tomorrow, 8:10, Nevada. You'll be back on with B. Moses tomorrow at 8:10, right?
Well, I will, unless B. Moses is still infirmed. In that case, I'll be here with Devin, just keeping it, holding it down until B. Moses gets off the sick bed.
Yeah, I saw it a little bit in the chat. I have not taken B. Moses' spot, just filling in, feeling a little bit under the weather. So could be here tomorrow, but if I'm not, I'll be at the 7 o'clock show. So appreciate you guys for joining. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, please. If you already haven't, go check out the Scoop message board. If you haven't done that, a lot of good stuff on there, good community to be a part of. But on that note, we appreciate you guys. We love you guys. Go Buckeyes. OH. He left me. IO, man. IO.